As a web designer, one of the things that I get asked a lot about is hosting. So I realized that if you've never had a website before, you're new to this whole thing, you may not even understand what hosting is. I just wanted to take a few minutes to kind of fill you in on some of the high level stuff, just so you can be a little more informed if you have to make a decision. So what is web hosting? So essentially you are renting space on a server, and that server does a few things. So the server stores the files that make up your website. So if you have a picture of a cat or a picture of your product or a video, perhaps, that file is going to reside on the server. And then when a visitor visits your site, the server is going to send that file to the visitor's web browser. The server may also run a website application or content management system like WordPress. So I build all my sites in WordPress, and that is an application that runs on the server using Linux. So there are several different price points, several different options for hosting. And those are going to vary depending on your needs. So here we go. The first one is shared hosting. So it is the most economical option. And what they've done is they've crammed a whole bunch of websites onto one server. So those resources, so the disk space, the processor cores, the memory, are shared by all the sites. So if there's a traffic spike that occurs, then resources might be in short supply. And perhaps that spike happens on another website that you have no control over. That can have an effect on your website. So if there's not enough resources, then your site may run very slowly or it might crash. And because you have multiple sites on one server, it can be more difficult to ensure security. So I've heard it likened unto living in an apartment complex. And let's just say that there are certain resources, the parking lot and the laundry room, which are shared. So you have to come home early and get your parking spot because, if you don't, then there might be no parking spots left and you might have to park on the street and end up with a ticket. You want to do your laundry. You got to make sure you get there soon because there could be somebody else using the laundry. It can be frustrating. Also, if the guy next door to you doesn't lock his door and somebody wants to break into his house, and they might be able to break in yours because you share a balcony with that person. So shared hosting is great if you need to host something that doesn't have a lot of traffic. I talk about those resource problems. If you get a decent shared hosting plan, if you're dealing with, even 10,000, 20,000 visitors a month, it's not going to be a big problem. If you go with a very cheap shared hosting package, that may not be the case rather. The next we have is virtual private server. So it's more expensive for sure, but there are fewer websites on the server. And what they've actually done is they take the server, a physical box, and they break it up into many virtual servers. So it's used on sites with moderate traffic. But what this ensures is that there are dedicated resources. So there's a certain amount of drive space that belongs to you. There's a certain amount of processor cores that belongs to you. There's a certain amount of memory and so on and so forth. So maybe think of it like a slightly better apartment complex where you have your own assigned parking, where perhaps you have a laundry room in your actual unit. You're not required to share those, subject to availability with your neighbors. It's got better security because those virtual private servers are sandboxed. So it's harder for someone to break into another website and to get into yours. Another cool thing about them is they're scalable because the box contains, a lot of processor cores, a lot of memory, a lot of disk space. And if you call your hosting provider and say, I need to upgrade, they can just allocate more of those to you. So there's no requirement to change out hardware. It can be done almost seamlessly to upgrade to something with a little more horsepower. Now, sometimes you'll hear about cloud hosting. Cloud hosting is a virtual private server as well, except that they'll build it using a cluster of servers. So there may be say, 4 servers in a cluster, and the data is shared across those 4. And if there is a server failure, then the 3 remaining servers in the cluster are going to be able to pick up the slack, and there won't be any downtime on your site. The highest level is dedicated server. So this is the highest performance option. It is quite expensive usually, but it's a single website on a server. So it's great for high traffic, and you know that 100% of the resources on the server belong to your website. And because you're on your own server, you don't have to worry about anybody trying to get in to your website through another website on that server. So, this would be like your standalone house. You're not sharing anything with anybody else. You're an island unto yourself. So these can be several $100s a month for a high performance server. But if you're an online business that is going to lose thousands of dollars an hour if your website goes down, or if it runs slowly is going to lose money, then spending a few $100s a month on a dedicated server may be a no-brainer. And as I said, there's a lot of price variation, but in general, you're going to get what you pay for. So you can get, say, for example, a really cheap virtual private server for $20 a month, or you might actually pay $60 or $80 a month for a really good shared hosting. But generally speaking, the price you're going to pay is going to be in line with the level of service, with the level of security, with their support. So you need to assess what your needs are for hosting. If you're, getting a lot of traffic, a little bit of traffic, if you're going to need a lot of support from the hosting provider, then you may want to ask some questions before you just try and go with the cheapest option available to you. Anyway, I hope you find that helpful, and I hope I've answered some of your questions about what hosting is and what options are available.